もしやコスモでは。
Cosmo makes me free.
Cosmo AP Luxury Sports.
There's a tiny hole in the sill right here. I'm going to try my luck and see if it'll just be filled with weld, but I'm betting the metal's just going to go away. Yep, gone. Well, I tried again off camera, and with the proper wire feed and current settings, I was able to weld it. So now I just have to grind out the weld. Easy repair, all done. Well, I'm going to start to do some of the repairs in this area next, so, also here. So, I'm going to pull the seatbelt retractor for a little bit more clearance. One of those extremely long bolts. Thing out of the way. Ooh, look at that. Now there appears to be a mouse nest or a rat nest or something made up of this material from the carpet underlayment in the frame. It's a really good thing I noticed, because this is the kind of thing that would cause the car to catch fire once I start welding or grinding in the area. So we'll just extract this first. There it is. Look at that. Fresh mouse corpse.
Oh, is it big?
Oh, it just came apart. There's the tail. And by fresh, I mean petrified. Oh, yeah, look at that.
Oh, can I leak it?
I think this area is solid enough that I can mostly cut out the just obvious bad part and then weld in a simple flat square patch. I guess I'll find out that's true once I start welding and finding out that the metal just disappears underneath the heat. Just there's like 5 different panels that join in this spot, so the easier the repair is, I think the better. Might be a bit thin. And more mouse nest. I'm going to try to get some weld-proof primer into the area so it can dry while I'm making the little patch panel. I really can't see much of this area, so I don't know if this is going to make much of a difference, but anything's better than nothing. This patch is really simple and flat. No need for a template. Just trace it out directly onto the new metal and cut it out on the bandsaw.
After cutting it out, I smooth the edges on the bench grinder.
I usually do 3 coats of this weld-through primer. The can says 2 or 3 will work, but I generally do the full 3 just to be thorough. The bottom of the patch panel needs a coat of primer as well.
After the primer has dried for about 20 minutes, the panel can be tacked into place. I should point out that this is a pretty cramped area of the car, and working in this area is about as awkward as going to your favorite strip club only to discover that your sister is now paying for her medical education working at the same establishment.
Now that the patch is poorly tacked in place, I'll clean it off with the wire wheel before I burn it in. Well, that was fun. Let that cool, and then patch up all the spots I missed. This is not a pleasant position in which to work. And the final step in this repair is just to drill this hole, which I guess is used to secure some kind of trim clip. There you go. Well, since I'm working back here, I guess it's time to fix this section as well. So I'll just begin the process of marking it and cutting out. The only problem is I really don't know how to recreate this cross piece here. So we'll see what I come up with once I get the repair started. Well, with the grinding done, time to remove these spot welds. I'm not sure I found them all, but I think I found most of them.
The air hammer makes short work of the weaker spot welds.
I keep finding spot welds, keep drilling them out, keep finding more. Eventually I'll find them all. That's the last one. There we are. Lovely. Well, there's all kinds of crap in here, and I don't have my vacuum, so I'm just going to blow it out. That's why I'm wearing my mask. Who knows if there's dead mouse or other nasty in there. I'm going to clean some of the rust off. Just going to clean some of this undercoating off of this area before I start any welding repairs. Just make the welding a lot better.
I'm removing any last remnants of tar and road grime and grease with a generous blasting of brake cleaner and then drying it off with compressed air. Because of the lack of space, I couldn't fit a cutting wheel, so I had to use the stupid body saw, a tool which I really, really hate. This flange is rusty to the point where it can't be welded to, so I'm going to have to cut it out and replace it as part of this repair.
Before I start spraying this with weld-through primer, first I'm going to fill some of the holes I created by drilling out the spot welds. These are just really easy rosette welds, no problem. I'd really like to be able to use a proper rust paint rather than just weld through primer in areas like this. But the problem is, you can't weld through POR 15. I'm trying to get this piece back into a shape where it basically fits, because having a close enough template is going to make it a lot easier to make a patch panel. So it's almost there, it just needs a little pounding around this area. The air hammer mangled it pretty bad as it's coming out. Well, it looks like the fit's good enough to use as a template. So before I start making my new piece, I'm going to have to replace this strip that I cut out here. I made this little strip and drilled the spot weld holes, so now all I have to do is weld it in place. Well, now I'm just going to weld these joints. I'm not really repairing this area as it was in the factory. There's like 4 different panels that come together here, and even though it's a bit rusted, I'd have to disassemble half of this section to repair it. So what I'm going to do is just kind of merge all these panels into one with a weld bead along there, and hopefully the metal is at least good enough to support that weld bead. Well, it's a little rusty, but it's welding, mostly. Weld-through primer doesn't really weld through very well either.
Just on the off chance you haven't noticed, there is a lot of grinding in sheet metal repair.
Well, that was not fun grinding. It's a very, very small space to work tools in, but that's good enough. And because this piece is overlapped by another panel, of course it needs weld primer. Well, now it's time to recreate the rusty piece that I cut out. I'm going to have to do it in 2 pieces because I don't have any kind of a sheet metal brake to do this 90 degree, and it's also kind of a compound curve. So what I'm going to do is cut it out, and then I will simply weld it on to the larger panel once it's made.
I'm cutting out this little divoted area to flatten out the panel, thus making template making a lot easier.
Now I'll just make a template of the big piece. This is a little bit annoying because you really need 3 hands to do this, and I only have 2 hands. It's kind of a bunch of compound curves. And mark the front. Seems to be about right. Well, the template seems to fit all right, so now it gets transferred to the metal. As you can probably tell, it's pretty much the same step for any sheet metal repair. Cut out the rusted sheet metal, make a template, transfer that template to the metal, cut the metal, fit the metal, then weld it in. It's kind of tedious.
Look, more fascinating grinding. off camera I cut out the end flange, so now I'll just tack it into place.
With the flange tacked in, it looks like it's going to fit pretty well, so I'm going to fully weld the flange and then do my final grinding to fit the panel. After some basic shaping of this panel, I'm drilling out the spot weld hole. That's going to make it a little bit easier for me to line it up with the frame rail underneath. Okay, well this now fits well enough that it can be spot welded in, and then I can bend the remaining edges to match up perfectly with the originals. Yeah, so I kind of screwed up and left myself a little bit of a gap here, which is going to be a lot of fun to fill with weld.
The patch panel gets a good glass bead blasting to clean off all the mill scale and make sure the weld primer adheres properly.
Now it's time to spot weld the panel in place. I did one weld off camera just to get it into position, and as you might be able to see from the video, that weld turned out fairly poorly. I still need a little bit of practice in the old spot welding with a MIG. Not bad. Kind of big, but not bad. That's what she said. And that's the last spot weld. Now it's time to tack the edges into place. This involves putting a tack here and a tack there, and then using a hammer and various implements to bang on the metal until the edges line up. It's just a matter of doing that very carefully, going around the entire circumference of the panel so that they both match up pretty well before they're finished welded. Filling this wicked gap I left for myself is a lot of fun. And this, what I'm doing right now, is the last tack. Done. Now just a little bit of hammering and I can weld that sucker in.
This footage is sped up about 800%. In real life it took about 20 minutes to weld the panel in place. I wonder how many seizures this footage will induce by the time it's over.
So to form the cross piece that I have to replace, I'm just bending a piece of sheet metal over a 1/2-inch steel rod to try to get it into a rough shape, sort of a half tube, and then I will pound it with a hammer to try to finalize the shape afterwards. I don't know if any of this is going to work, but we'll find out. Seems to be folding over pretty well.
Of course, it occurred to me after I did this that I could have just driven to the metal store and bought some thin-walled 3/8-inch tubing, then cut it in half. That probably would have saved me some work.
Okay, after repeated hammerings and squeezings, I have this shape. So what I'm going to do is just bandside down the center of it, and I think that should be close enough. Well, it looks like my plan worked. This is pretty close. Just going to have to trim it, grind it a bit, and it should do the job. Well, it looks like we're pretty good for fit there. Okay, I'll just tack this in place now.
Due to the awkward position, welding this thing in was just absolutely no fun at all. Probably about as fun as tongue-kissing Amy Winehouse. What, too soon? Actually, there's probably very little difference in kissing Amy Winehouse as a decomposing corpse versus when she was alive.
Almost done. I just need to round off this corner. I already practiced on that one off camera and it came out fine, as well as that one, so I just have to put a pile of weld at this corner to close it off, and then grind it down round. Well, now we'll just let that cool and then grind this smooth.
I probably used every single handheld grinder in the place, as well as every variety of grinding disc that I have to get this done. There was a lot of grinding.
finally done.